The winter evening settled over the city like a quiet, icy whisper. Snowflakes drifted lazily beneath the golden hue of street lamps, painting the streets in stillness. At 35, Michael Chen sat cocooned in the warmth of his sleek BMW, his hands steady on the wheel as he navigated his usual route home from his downtown office. As CEO of a successful pharmaceutical firm, his world revolved around high-stakes meetings and strategic decisions. But that night, something unexpected happened, something small, almost forgettable to anyone else. But it would forever alter the course of his life. As he approached a lonely intersection, his eyes caught sight of a figure at the bus stop ahead. A young woman sat alone, hunched on the icy bench. Her light blue winter coat offered little defense against the biting cold, and her reddish-brown hair peeked out from beneath a burgundy knit cap. Even from a distance, Michael could see she was trembling. There was something quietly dignified about her, a patient strength in the way she endured the cold that stirred an old memory. It reminded him of his mother, who had worked tirelessly to keep their family afloat when he was young. Michael slowed the car, pulled to the side of the road, and rolled down his window. "Excuse me," he called gently. "Are you waiting for the bus?" She looked up, startled. Her cheeks were flushed pink from the wind. She appeared to be in her early 20s, auburn hair pulled back, and eyes that held exhaustion but also quiet determination. She wore hospital scrubs under her thin coat, and her name badge glinted in the streetlight. "Yes," she answered, her voice barely louder than the wind. "But I think the buses are delayed because of the storm." Michael looked at her closely. Everything about her suggested she worked in healthcare, someone who spent her days tending to others. Her calm presence reminded him of the nurses who'd cared for his father in his final days. "How long have you been waiting?" he asked, concern creeping into his tone. "About an hour," she said. "My car broke down this morning and I had to take the bus to work. Evening routes don't come as often." Without hesitation, Michael shifted his car into park, stepped out, and approached her through the falling snow. His coat, long and finely tailored, brushed against his knees, and his dark, wavy hair gathered a layer of white. But his expression wasn't that of a polished businessman. It was open and sincere. "I'm Michael," he said, extending a gloved hand, "and you're coming with me. It's too cold out here." She hesitated, visibly torn. Michael could see the caution in her eyes. He didn't blame her. Any woman alone would be wary. But something about his voice or his presence seemed to settle her nerves. "I'm Rebecca," she said slowly. "Rebecca Martinez. I'm a nurse at General Hospital." She smiled faintly. "Thank you, but I don't want to cause any trouble." "It's no trouble," he replied. "My mother always told me we look out for each other during storms. Where do you live?" She gave him directions to her apartment on the other side of town. Michael opened the passenger door and waited as she gathered her small purse and the thermos she had been clutching tightly. Inside the warm car, her shoulders visibly relaxed, as if the tension was finally melting away. "This is very kind of you," Rebecca said softly once they were driving. "I was beginning to think I'd be stuck there all night." Michael glanced at her, noting how the heater had returned color to her cheeks. "What kind of nursing do you do?" he asked with genuine interest. "Pediatric oncology," she replied. "I work with children who have cancer." Michael felt something shift in his chest. Of all the medical paths she could have chosen, she had picked one of the most emotionally demanding. It took not just expertise, but enormous empathy and strength. "That must be very hard," he said quietly. Rebecca nodded, her gaze drifting to the snow-covered sidewalks. "It is, but it's also incredibly rewarding. Those kids, and they're so brave. They teach me what really matters." As they continued driving, a quiet trust began to form. Rebecca shared more than she expected to with someone she'd just met. She talked about the kids, her dream of becoming a nurse practitioner, and how some nights she cried alone from the emotional weight. But she always went back the next morning. Michael, in turn, opened up in a way he hadn't in years. He told her about his father's illness, how it had shaped his career and his choice to focus his company's research on rare and often neglected diseases. He spoke of his admiration for nurses, for those who showed up every day even when the work hurt. "My father used to say the measure of a person isn't what they earn, but what they give," Michael said as they neared her street. "I think he would have really respected what you do." When they arrived, Michael parked and walked her to the door, shielding her from the wind as the storm picked up again. They stood under a small overhang, the porch light casting a soft glow. "Thank you," Rebecca said, her voice warm. "I really mean it. I don't know how to repay you." "No need to," Michael replied with a slight smile. "But would you let me take you to dinner sometime? I'd love to keep this conversation going." Rebecca looked at him closely. In the light, she saw something beyond his tailored coat and confident manner. She saw a man who had known loss and chosen kindness anyway. A man who didn't just speak generously, he lived it. "I'd like that," she said simply. 3 months passed and spring began to soften the sharp edges of winter. What had started as a chance meeting became something steady and grounding. Their dinners turned into long conversations, and those conversations turned into companionship that neither had realized they were missing. Michael looked forward to Rebecca's stories about the children she cared for. He found himself deeply moved by her compassion and strength. Rebecca, in turn, saw beyond the title of CEO and discovered a man who used his power to make a quiet difference in the lives of others. When she learned that his company had anonymously funded the new pediatric wing at her hospital, she realized his kindness had never been performative. It was simply who he was. One warm April evening, they walked through the park where they often met. As they reached a familiar bench, Michael took her hands in his. "Rebecca," he said gently, "meeting you changed everything. You reminded me that real success isn't about building empires. It's about building something that matters. Connections, trust, love." Tears welled in her eyes as she smiled. "You changed my life too, Michael. You taught me that kindness doesn't stop at the hospital doors. It's something we can offer each other, every single day." And there, beneath the soft glow of the city lights, they stood together. Two people once strangers, now something far more. Their journey had begun on a snowy street with a simple offer of help. But sometimes, it's those small, unplanned gestures that lead to the most profound chapters of our lives.